Andrew's unending allegations. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was just preparing for his birthday and had barely enough time to tuck into a birthday breakfast before a small convoy of unmarked police cars descended on his new home on the King's private Sandringham estate in Norfolk. This was the first indication that an unusual event was about to unfold in the House of Windsor, and likely not one the former prince ever expected to witness in his 66 spins around the sun. However, recent developments indicate that the former Duke of York is no stranger to controversial issues, as there are still investigations ongoing on Epstein's case. With the sudden arrival of the police at his place, it seems this might just be the beginning of some more crisis for the man from Norfolk. Now the question is, what have the police come to do at Andrew's apartment? Is there something sinister that needs to unfold? Brace up for yet another thrilling revelation from Windsor. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor continues to be dogged by his links to Epstein, as BBC reports have it that Thames Valley Police is assessing allegations that a woman was sent to the UK by Epstein for an intimate encounter with Mountbatten Windsor. The encounter, which allegedly occurred at the former prince's residence, Royal Lodge, in 2010, involved a woman who is not British and was in her 20s at the time. It would be recalled that the BBC had previously asked Mountbatten Windsor for comment about the allegations when it was first reported, but he has yet to respond and has strongly denied any wrongdoing. In a statement from Brad Edwards, a lawyer whose US law firm has been representing Epstein victims since 2008, said that after spending the night with Mountbatten Windsor, the woman was given tea and a tour of Buckingham Palace. It is believed that her account of spending the night at Royal Lodge is the first time an Epstein survivor has alleged a sexual encounter occurred at a royal residence. In 2014, the late Virginia Giuffre became the first woman to publicly accuse Mountbatten Windsor of similar encounters. She alleged that as a 17-year-old, she was trafficked by Epstein and his girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell and forced to have sex with Mountbatten Windsor, a claim he continues to deny. In 2021, Giuffre reported filed a civil lawsuit in the US against him before settling the case in February 2022 for an estimated £12 million. Unfortunately, reports have it that she took her own life last year, sparking the beginning of fresh allegations against Andrew. Now, reports have it that the Andrew Epstein's case has raised growing concern around the royal house, as questions have continued to be asked by people close to Windsor and the royal family about the situation on hand. Is it about to be solved, or something darker is about to be uncovered? Stay tuned for a far more exciting revelation about Andrew Epstein's case that will blow your mind. Andrew Epstein's new twist. It seems that Andrew Epstein's case is not about to die down anytime soon, as fresh links continue to grow like wildfire. Reports have it that Andrew is now facing greater scrutiny with the release of millions of pages of documents and images by the US Department of Justice. A recent tranche of files relating to the financier includes pictures appearing to show Mountbatten Windsor kneeling on all fours over a woman lying on the ground. A number of email exchanges between Epstein and Mountbatten Windsor, which came in the years after the US billionaire pleaded guilty to soliciting a minor, were also published in the files. According to one set of emails in the latest release, Mountbatten Windsor and his police protection officers were given a temporary security code to get in and out of Epstein's New York home for a stay in December 2010. According to eyewitnesses, the emails show arrangements being made for Mountbatten Windsor's December 2010 stay with the convicted offender, who had finished serving a prison sentence less than 5 months earlier. The pair were said to have been photographed walking in New York's Central Park on 9th of December 2010. The former prince had earlier told BBC Newsnight in 2019 that the visit was with the sole purpose of saying to him that because he had been convicted, it was inappropriate for them to be seen together. However, reports have it that the BBC has contacted Mountbatten Windsor and the Metropolitan Police for comment. Now, the former prince is facing mounting pressure to testify before the US Congress over his dealings with Epstein. A week earlier, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer had said that in terms of testifying, anybody who has got information should be prepared to share that information in whatever form they are asked to do that. It now remains to be seen if anybody has any information or would be ready to give any. Sir Keir Starmer added that nobody can be victim-centered if they're not prepared to do that. Palace sources have also said that providing testimony is now a matter for Andrew and his conscience. Speaking to BBC Breakfast on Wednesday, Epstein survivor Lisa Phillips said Mountbatten Windsor testifying would be everything. It would be recalled that Epstein died in a New York prison cell on August 10, 2019, as he awaited trial on sex trafficking charges. This brings us to the question of why Andrew was forced out of the family house. But wait, was the former prince actually forced out, or was it just a strategy based on the ongoing saga? We're about to find out. Andrew leaves the Royal Lodge. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has moved out of his home in Windsor to the Sandringham estate in Norfolk. The former prince was reported to have left Royal Lodge on Monday night and is currently living at Wood Farm on the Sandringham estate while his permanent home undergoes renovations. Earlier reports had it that the Buckingham Palace had said the move would happen in early 2026, but the fallout from the latest drop of Jeffrey Epstein files appears to have sped up his departure. There is no doubt that pressure has been building on Mountbatten Windsor to give evidence in the US over his relationship with the pedophile financier, but he has always denied any wrongdoing. The palace announced that he would be moving from Royal Lodge in October. At the same time, his title of prince was removed. It is widely known that the Sandringham estate is privately owned by the king, and he will pay the costs of his brother's new home. It is now believed that he will ultimately live at Marsh Farm on the estate. Several sources have now claimed that the Andrew problem has been challenging for the royal family, and at times, decisions around how to handle the former prince have seemed slow and ineffective. It is also believed that his lease of Royal Lodge had become symbolic of the wider problems his relationship with Epstein has caused, which has raised questions about privilege, transparency, and the use of public money. It is now hoped that the move to Sandringham will be a decisive change that keeps Mountbatten Windsor out of the public eye where possible. However, sources close to the royal family have said that although Mountbatten Windsor's poor judgment needed sanction, he does remain a member of the family, and on a personal level, there is a duty of care owed to him, hence the provision of a home in Norfolk funded by the king. Now, Mountbatten Windsor, also formerly known as the Duke of York, is expected to return to Windsor over the next few weeks to collect the remainder of his belongings, but his permanent base is now officially in Norfolk. He was said to have been last seen in Windsor on Monday, riding on horseback close to his previous home. He was also photographed driving away from Windsor Castle waving at passers-by, but the images were said to have been poorly received by the palace. In an official statement released from Buckingham Palace about Royal Lodge in October last year, it was said that formal notice has now been served to surrender the lease. This followed weeks of controversy over the amount of rent being paid to the Crown Estate who leased the property. A National Audit Office report also shows that when Mountbatten Windsor took on the lease in 2003, he agreed to pay more than £8 million, paying for repairs and effectively buying himself out of future rent obligations for the duration of the 75-year lease. This deal was said to be based on paying in advance a notional rent of £260,000 per year. As part of the arrangement, reports have it that Mountbatten Windsor could have been entitled to £488,000 for an early surrender of his 75-year lease, but a report from the Crown Estate for MPS on the Public Spending Watchdog says the property is in need of so many repairs that in all likelihood he will not be owed any compensation. Royal sources told the BBC in October that Mountbatten Windsor's move would be delayed until the new year to avoid the embarrassment of him being in Sandringham at Christmas, where the royal family traditionally gathers for the festive season. Sandringham was reportedly bought in 1862 by the then Prince of Wales, who later became Edward VII as a private country retreat. The historic sprawling estate spans approximately 31 square miles, which is approximately 80 square kilometers, making it around the same size as Nottingham. The area includes gardens, a nature reserve, woodland, farms, several villages, schools, a caravan park, a museum, a cricket ground, and a village hall. Now, you would have thought that Andrew's leaving the Royal Lodge should signal the end of his troubles, but no, it just began. What happened to Andrew in his new abode? Has he been able to bury his ghost? Hold on. This is about the most interesting part of the story: Andrew's arrest. At 8 a.m. on Thursday, 19th February 2026, reports have it that plainclothes officers arrived at Wood Farm to take the king's brother into custody, with Thames Valley Police confirming shortly afterwards that a man in his 60s from Norfolk had been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. Depending on who you talk to, Thursday's developments were surprising or inevitable, inconceivable, or decades in the making, but most palace watchers would agree they are unprecedented in modern times. There is a growing belief that Andrew's critics have for years been anxiously waiting to see if the royal would ever end up in a prison cell over his past behavior, while others hardly believed a day like this would arrive for a member of the British royal family. Undoubtedly, Andrew's sins have hidden in plain sight for decades, but the release of the so-called Epstein files in staged document batches since December unearthed more concerning allegations around the king's brother. However, being named in the Epstein files is said to not be an indication of misconduct, but journalists sorting through the trove of 3 million documents were quick to home in on emails that appeared to show the former prince forwarding sensitive government documents and commercial information to convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. While the royal was a trade envoy for the UK, the emails indicated Andrew sent information from his official work to Epstein. Despite this, reports have it that Andrew has not been charged with a crime. 11 hours after his dramatic arrest, Andrew was said to have emerged from Aylsham police station looking shell-shocked. He was believed to have been slouched in the backseat of a car in an effort to avoid the notice of the long lens cameras of the waiting press pack. The length of time he spent under detention indicates the police had plenty of questions to ask. Only time will tell if they were satisfied with his answers and if more queries will surface. Last year, as the ghost of Epstein returned to haunt the House of Windsor, King Charles reportedly performed a series of exorcisms to satisfy an outraged public. He was said to have stripped Andrew of his prince title and booted him out of his sprawling 30-room mansion after emails proved he had lied about breaking off contact with Epstein in 2010. A more stricter penalty was reported to have been dished out by the UK MPS, who also called for his succession rights to be revoked so that he no longer has a position as eighth in line to the throne. After the arrest, King Charles's statement notably did not include any mention of Andrew as his brother. He was said to have believed that what now follows is the full, fair, and proper process by which this issue is investigated in the appropriate manner and by the appropriate authorities. Like so many of the elite caught in Epstein's web, Andrew believed he would escape scrutiny for his behavior, but it is precisely because of his name and position that his alleged wrongdoing has attracted so much attention and has now delivered him into the hands of the law. As the doors of royal privileges inch closer to shutting on Prince Andrew, one thing is clear: this isn't just about property, it's about power, reputation, and the future of the monarchy. With pressure mounting from both the public and the palace, the fallout could reshape his place within the royal circle forever. But what do you think? Is this long overdue accountability or another chapter in a much larger royal crisis? Let us know your thoughts below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more exclusive royal updates.